the newcomer session. So everything is going swell up to now. I am Niels. I am a member of the Edu team or the Edu Directorate, and we're trying to make your stay and visit with the IETF take as long as possible so that you feel really welcome in this community. But we also have stuff to learn from you. So you can help, you can tell us how we can do better. So you might have taken part in the webinar, or you might have a mentor. How many of you have got a mentor? It's a few. There is the quick connection session this afternoon. How many of you are planning to go there? That's a few. There's the newcomer meet and greet after that, where you can meet with area directors and mentors. So we have a couple of these things going on during the week. Thursday morning, we have for you free breakfast if you tell us what we can improve. So we really would like to invite you to come to that feedback session so we can help coming into the IETF, which is a bit of a particular environment, make a better and more sticky experience. So that would be great. If you have any questions, Karen, who is in the back of the room, Karen, can you shortly wave? She's the chair of the Edu Directorate, so my boss. And but if you can always reach out to the Edu team and Edu Directorate members if you have any questions to your mentors, and we're happy to help you. Now, without further ado, two great presenters that will guide you through the best ways of finding out what these dots mean, how to get a draft, and how to get active. Thanks so much. Enjoy the week.
Can someone in the back wave their hand? Make sure this, okay, so this works. We're not going to stand up. Yeah, that's the clicker. So, and then it's right here. So my name is Rich Sauls. I'll be talking second. I've been involved with the IETF for a number of years. I'm chair of a couple working groups. My main focus is on security, TLS. I work. Eat the mic. Yeah. Okay. There we go. At least this won't. At least it won't drop, right? So I work for a company, Akamai Technologies, and I'm here to, I'm glad to help, but I'll be talking second, and to reduce the number of transitions, we'll let Anshul introduce herself. But we do have a mix here, industry and academia, which is nice and representative of the IETF.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anshul Malhotra. I'm a graduate student at Boston University, USA. And my research focuses basically on the security of internet protocols. Here at IETF, I'm mainly involved with the NTP working group, DNS working group, and security area working groups. And this is my 7th IETF now. Wow, yeah, that's amazing. I've survived it, guys. You will too. Okay, so let's get you started. Okay, so first of all, welcome all to the IETF. This set of slides was first drafted by Scott Bredner from Harvard University, and later it was taken over by Mike St. John's. I haven't met these people personally, but I'm sure they're awesome guys. They have done a great job. And recently, I think in the past year, this slide deck was taken over by the Edu team, and they have been working on it since forever. Okay, so let's see what's there. Okay, so guys, familiarize yourself well with this slide, because this is the one that you're going to see at the beginning of every working session, every working group session. As it says, it's an IETF Note Well slide, so you guys better note it well. This basically reminds you of that as an IETF participant, you are obliged to, or you are expected to follow certain policies that are in effect on various topics that covers the patents or the code of conduct processes. There are certain IETF BCPs, that is the best current practices documents that are written by very smart people that I advise you to go and read. They will tell you about the processes of IETF ranging from internet standards and working group processes. 25, it tells you about the anti-harassment procedures that the IETF follows, about the code of conduct, copyright, patents, and participation, and most recently, this privacy policy BCP, I think. And this privacy policy, it basically tells you that all the information that you give to IETF, how is it handled, all the procedures that how IETF handles your private information. You should go read it if you are interested in that sort of thing. So this is the most popular slide that you guys are going to see on all working group sessions. Then the newcomer activities. I believe you all are newcomers here. This is your first or second IETF, I believe. So we as IETFers take a great effort to provide you with all the resources and information that is necessary for you to integrate well into this community. So beginning with the newcomers tutorial here today, for the next 1 hour, we are going to tell you about some things that will help you survive through this week. Then today evening, I hope you all have registered. From 3 to 4, we have an IETF quick connection session. This is basically, as Rich says, it's like speed dating. So you'll have short one-to-one conversation with a lot of experienced IETFers. You'll get to know what everyone is doing, and you can recognize and try to see which people do you want to work with, what areas you are interested in. And then we have newcomers meet and greet from 4 to 5, which will be attended by working group chairs, area directors, and other IETF leaders. And once you have recognized who you want to really work with, then in this session, you can just go and talk to them and see how you can get more involved with them. There is nothing formal. It's a very informal session. There will be no speeches, no presentations, but there will be wine, there will be beer, and there will be snacks. So you better go there. Then we have this mentoring. I saw a few people. How many of you have mentors assigned already? Very few people. I would suggest others to do the same, because these are very smart people. They would advise you, they would help you. You can ask very specific questions to them. If you want to connect to someone, you don't want to talk to someone specifically, you can ask them. They will introduce you to them. It will make your life easier. Okay, and then we have Monday evening, that is tomorrow. We have newcomers dinner. You guys can go and have chit chat with people. There'll be people from working group session chairs. We'll have area directors, and there are other people as well, I think. It's again a very informal dinner, and you can go and chat with people. Okay, so scope. Let's see what you can expect from this tutorial. So in this presentation, we are going to give you a very brief introduction and general advice on how to survive this week as your first time or second time participation at IETF sessions. We'll also familiarize you with how to get connected with people, how to recognize, make strategies on what you want to do here, what's the aim that you want to accomplish here. What this presentation does not include is the history of IETF. We are not going to talk about that. We are not going to talk about or dictate how standards are going to be written, but we'll definitely guide you to the right pointers and the sources of information where you can get all of this. For instance, there is this link on YouTube channel that will give you that will provide you information on all these topics. Okay, so the IETF and related organizations. What is the mission of IETF? The IETF aims to produce highly technical, high quality technical internet documents with the aim to make internet work better. And this mission of IETF is guided by several principles. So one of the principles that guide this mission of IETF is open process. We here at IETF believe that anyone can come and participate and see what's going on and have their voice heard on a particular issue. The aim is to make all the documents, mailing list, talking session, attendees list available to the public. So we here believe in an open process. Then another principle that guides this mission is the voluntary participation. All the participants here are self-motivated and highly passionate about furthering the mission of IETF, that is, to make the internet work better. The IETF aims to deal with the topics. We try here to solve the topics and issues that we have technical competence in. And one of our aims is to output the documents or to produce outputs that are based on network engineering principles. So these are the few principles that the IETF, the idea is to make internet work better for anyone ranging from a normal user to an internet service provider or a content distribution network, etc. IETF, basically we are IETF is a standards development organization. There are several other internet organizations, but I would say we are different from all of them in various aspects. First of all, there is nothing binding you to the IETF. There is no formal membership. You can come and go as you please. Here at IETF, we have no formal voting process. We do not raise hands or have a voting ballets. We do things here by humming, and we'll talk about it later. We believe in rough consensus here, and we achieve it by humming. IETF is not related to any formal government organization, so no government, IETF doesn't have to go through any of the government processes, which is very different from most of the other standard internet organizations. One other important thing is that all the standards that we do here are very voluntary. There are no formal processes to make people or to mandate those standards on people. We do not mandate standards from the top. It's a very community-driven or market-driven approach where people get together, recognize a problem, try to solve it, people go and implement it, deploy it in the real world, and see and give us the feedback. And then from there, we iterate this process of improving the standard, and that's how it goes. It's not that we are mandating or asking someone to adopt it. It's more evidence-based. If people like it, they'll adopt it. Here at IETF, we are more focused on internet technologies. We standardize internet technologies, let's say from layer 3 to up to the application layer. And as I said before, it's a very bottoms-up approach. We do not write standards first. We believe in running code. So it's more of a market-driven approach. Okay, this one is really interesting. IETF areas. If you're here for the technical purposes, then you should look at these IETF areas. Basically, the work of IETF is done in the working groups. Is done by the technical work at IETF is done in the working groups, and the IETF divides these working groups into several areas. Here on the slide, you're seeing seven different areas. These are not the only ones. They may change the next time you come here. Maybe you'll see different areas. Each area has a couple of area directors, which are appointed by IESG, I think. And these area directors look into the working, they take care that the working groups within each area are well coordinated, and all the internet needs all the needs of the internet in that particular area are being met by these working groups. And if there is a lack of some technical assistance or a new working group needs to be created on some different technology belonging to the same area, they're responsible for creating it. As the first time IETFer, I would suggest you to have a deeper look into these areas and see which areas you are interested in working. Their names are pretty self-explanatory, but I can go over them briefly. There is this arts area, application and real-time group. It's basically divided into two parts. First, it deals with the protocols that are delay sensitive, such as real-time applications, voice or video calling or instant messaging. And then there is another part, the protocols that deals with the applications that are not really time sensitive, such as emails or your file transfer protocol, HTTP, etc. Basically non-real-time protocols. Then we have transport area. It makes sure that the data on the internet is transferred properly. It takes care of the protocols that are related to that. It also includes stuff like congestion control. Then we have routing area. It's responsible for all the routing protocols on the internet, such as BGP. You'll find stuff like BGP or OSPF protocols under this area. Then we have internet area. It's mainly related to the IP layer. It takes care of things like what are the implications of IPv4 address definition, or how different IP stacks will work in coexistence. It also takes care of how IP layer will work on the new link layer protocols. Then we have this ops area, operations and management. It's also basically divided into, I think, two parts, the network management and the operations. Operations function basically deals with getting feedback from the operators on how the protocols, how the IETF protocols and procedures are working. Then we have security area, security protocols and mechanisms. It takes care of security protocols and mechanisms. And this area of IETF intersects with almost all other areas, because security is required in all other areas. And the people or participants of this group are mostly seen working with other working groups as well, working groups of other areas as well. Then we have this general area, which is basically focused on supporting, maintaining, and updating the IETF processes and protocols. Okay, this is interesting. The IETF and Consensus. So here at IETF, we do not believe in majority rule. We believe on rough consensus and running code. This is the term you'll hear a lot in the coming week. We believe in rough consensus and running code. So how do we achieve rough consensus? Say in a working group session, the chair wants to know the opinion of the room, the general opinion of the room. They'll ask you all to hum for or against a topic. It's just like singing. You'll hear the humming voice from people. It's not to say that something will be decided on the topic unequivocally. It's just a comparison to see where the people in the room lie on the spectrum of completely acceptable to completely non-acceptable. So it's a measurement, it's a rough measurement of consensus, basically. That's how we reach consensus here. And that's not the end of it, because since all people cannot make to an IETF meeting, face-to-face IETF meetings, so this consensus is usually taken to the mailing list in order to confirm the judgment and in order to accommodate the people who were not able to attend the working group session in person or remotely by any chance. So basically, humming is a way of measuring consensus. We do not believe in voting here. We do not believe in raising or show of hands here. This works the best here. And for more details on consensus and humming, you can go and read the 7282 RFC. It's very well written. I recommend reading it. Okay, so IETF culture. The people here are they're a self-selected group of highly diverse people, and diversity is important because we believe that diverse people are more likely to make better decisions. But also these people are very, very passionate. They are highly efficient, effective, motivated, smart, and they have very, very strong opinions. So don't get scared when you hear in the hallways people talking in a hostile tone or showing aggressive behavior. Don't get scared by the intense conversations here. Just go and say and insert your comments. People will listen to you. You have to understand that these people, they have been attending IETF since forever, like for decades. They know each other. They know how to talk to each other. They have their different ways. So just don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Just jump in wherever you want and you'll be heard. Technical excellence is one thing that is highly valued here. No matter where you come from, what your background is, who you work for, if you have something to say, you have a strong opinion, you have something really good that you want to share with people, people are very open here and you can go and talk to people. Technical excellence is valued. Unlike other organizations, we have a very informal dress code here. Wear whatever you want to wear, whatever you feel comfortable in. Most people like to wear t-shirts here. They're available on the registration desk. You can get them there. Otherwise, you'll find very few people wearing suits here, but it just depends. If that's your style, just do it. People have, as I told, people have been attending these meetings since forever. They have really close working relationships with people. It's time for people to catch up with their friends and colleagues and discuss work and other personal stuff. So it's a very close community here, I would say. It's a wonderful culture. You'll enjoy it. Okay. Do you want to do this?
Before we skip it. Sure. All right. So when we talk about the IETF at this level, it actually encompasses a whole bunch of other organizations. And as you can look at the chart there, the IETF is sort of the big blue square, but there are parts, it can be broken into parts. For example, there's a group called the RFC editors who take the documents and then do what we would call copy editing, make sure all the verb tenses match, make sure that the references, if it references something is a must happen over here, the same time it references it later on, it also should be a must happen, things like that. That's a paid position. The green box represents all of the working groups. Think of them as, they look like alphabet soup, like, floating in soup bowls. Each group is independent. They are organized, as Anshul had said earlier, into areas. And the directors of all the areas comprise the IESG, the Internet Engineering Steering Group. It's also part of the IETF, but the IESG is responsible for approving every document that comes out as either an RFC or a standards track RFC or just some informational or other best practices kinds of note. There's a support organization that there's paid professional staff who puts on these things. There are other legal entities. For example, when you book a hotel, 3 years in advance for 1,000 people, somebody has got to sign that contract, right? You can't expect some senior principal engineer from Google or Facebook or anybody, to have that kind of contractual authority. So there are legal entities that will sign and enter into legal agreements with, as I said, when you have 1,000, 1,500 people coming for a week, it takes work. There is the most useful of these other organizations is the IRTF, the Internet Research Task Force. They're meeting all day Monday. It's listed in the IETF agenda as an IETF registrant. You are free to attend any of the other IRTF meetings. So there are a couple sessions on TLS. There's a couple hour sessions on routing. There's a couple, I forget what some of the others are, IPv4, IPv6 conversion, things like that. Not designed to develop new standards, but designed to research how the deployment of them is going, weaknesses in them, and so on. Yeah, so back on.
Okay. So a little bit details on what these groups are. IESG, it's the Internet Engineering Steering Group. Yeah, it basically looks at the technical management of the IETF processes. As Rich mentioned, it takes care of the standardization process, like the standardization of the specifications. It consists of area directors that are selected by the nomination committee called NOMCOM, typically for a period of 2 years or so. Then we have an Internet Architecture Board. It's more of an oversight committee that takes care of the oversight of the Internet architecture and other standard processes. It provides the editorial management as well as publication. It takes care of the editorial management and the publication of the request for comments, RFCs, basically. Then we have IRTF, Internet Research Task Force. Well, this one is more related on the longer term research issues that are important to the Internet, as opposed to the parallel organization IETF, which is more focused on the immediate standardization and engineering topics. They're more short-term focused, whereas the research groups are more focused on the long-term projects that are important for the evolution of the Internet. And we have a number of focused and long-term research groups here. One of my favorites is CFRG, that is the Crypto Forum Research Group. It discusses and analyzes general cryptographic aspects of security protocols, and it's there to offer the guidance on the use of emerging mechanisms and the new uses of the existing protocols. Then we have this really interesting HRPC, that is Human Resource Protocol Consideration Group. It researches whether the standards and protocols can enable, strengthen, or threaten human rights as defined in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. I highly recommend attending this one. It's really interesting. Then we have several other IR research groups. We have MapRG, that is for the measurement and analysis of the protocols group. And we have several there you can check out on their website. Then we have IAOC. What does it stand for? I don't remember. It's
one of the legal entities.
It's responsible for the Administrative and Operations Committee. It's like Administrative and Operations Committee. And then, as the name suggests, it takes care of the fiscal and other administrative support for the IETF standard processes. Right, where the paid staff is. So you better join that.
Sure. Okay. All right, so I'm going to talk about what the week is going to be like. Yeah, have a seat. So the organized events, yeah, I can see, I'm good. Units of work at the IETF are organized by working groups. So there is, working group on TLS, SSL security. There are multiple working groups on DNS, adding new record types. There are multiple working groups in routing, all of which are grouped into the areas that Anshul mentioned before. The most official, quote, important part of the meeting of this week is for the working groups to meet. About 130 current working groups. There's a couple dozen that aren't bothering to meet this week, but face-to-face time is very important. It leverages the long-term involvement and relationships that people have had, but it also is a chance to, it's a lot easier to stand up at a microphone and ask a question and get an answer and they go, wait a minute, what did you mean? Than it is to have, 8, 10 email exchanges, right? So the working groups, and that provides the structure for the whole meeting. One of the things you'll find is there are bound to be conflicts. There are groups, there are sessions when you want to attend both parts. Every working group publishes an agenda. The first part of every working group meeting is to bash the agenda and make last-minute changes and additions. But you can look on the working group page to see what's going on. So it's not uncommon that someone will sit there for the first couple sections of a working group meeting and then dash across to a different working group where they may be presenting, or they may have other information. They may have other topics that are of more interest to them. I should mention every working group has a page on the IETF's website. The link is datatracker.ietf.org/WG for working group / and then the name. You can find those. We should have the link up here, but it's easily available. You can say, Acme homepage, and you'll get the page that has a list of all of the meetings, pointers to the mailing lists, pointers to the documents, the RFCs and the drafts that are or were published by the working group, and then the charter, the official definition of what the group is working on. More informal than a working group is what's called a birds of a feather session. The American or English phrase, birds of a feather flock together, meaning it's just an informal, although it's scheduled, an informal gathering of people who are interested in a topic. If, as a result of the meetings they've had, and generally there's just one, they can coalesce and come around with the idea that these are specific things we want to do, these are specific standards that we need, then a BOF can become a working group. There are sometimes BOFs that are what's called non-working group forming. They end up not being a working group. We discussed it, and we're not doing anything with it. There was one on short-term certificates that ended up not happening. It's the last one I can think of. More informal than that is what's called a bar BOF. And this is where you meet at the bar to talk about it. And it could be a real bar, or it could be somebody hosting an event where they will present their technology or present things, and then there'll be a BOF and a working group formed. Google, for example, Quick first came to the IETF where Google hosted a bar BOF. And rather than going to the bar, they just had, they had the hotel bring drinks in and appetizers, and they talked about what Quick is and why they found it useful and important and why they want to have the IETF make it an internet standard. Next meeting, there was a working group formed. Every area has an area-wide session. So the security area will meet in one area. There's at least one transport area meeting. Those are worthwhile to use as getting an overview. They also tend, if you're haven't been involved in those activities, it's hard to catch up from a cold start. So it's a mix of, here's generally what the area does, and then there's really specific nitty-gritty details about working group issues or area-wide concerns. So it's a mixed bag in terms of a newcomers thing. An IETF-wide plenary, I had to just look it up before. Plenary means that's a meeting where everybody goes. And the way they do that is there's nothing else scheduled. If you looking back at the alphabet soup slide, the bulk of the plenary is all of these organizations giving a status update. And then there's a Q&A period. There's often one or two speakers on the topics that are usually pretty interesting. But the plenaries, they can tend to run long. So just be forewarned. But it's worth attending at least one to get an idea of the overall structure of the IETF and its parent organizations. Hackathons. So Anshul mentioned we use the motto rough consensus and running code. The running code has become more and more important at the IETF. So now it started on Sunday. It's moved to take over the previous Saturday and the previous Sunday. So too late for all of you guys. But next time, there are signups in a wiki where some people will say, "Oh, I want to work on serving DNS over HTTP." That's a minor, small, relatively, I've got an HTTP stack, I've got a DNS server, I can build a front-end gateway. And so people who are interested in doing on these things will post that they want to work on it. And various engineers from multitude of companies will come and work. This is also a place where a lot of interop testing happens. Things you can test in a small environment. Does this browser's TLS stack talk to OpenSSL's TLS stack for 1.3? Does this quick server send data that this quick client can consume, and so on? There's also code sprints, which is for working on the IETF tools themselves, the data tracker website. So hackathons are becoming more and more important. They'll be mentioned in the plenary, probably as, here was the best hackathon event. If you register next time, because you want to write some code, register, you get another free t-shirt and free food. Right. During the course of the week, there are various lunch sessions. There is a working group chairman's session. There are tutorials. Most of them are all today. You'll see us at a lot of them. Social events. There is one night picked where the local host coordinates and sets up a social event. The tickets are like, a few $30 US extra. The most common use of the mailing list. So when you signed up, you were given the opportunity to join the attendees list, right? 102 attendees at IETF.org. The two most common uses of those mailing lists are, what kind of SIM card should I get? And I want to travel also. Also, I'm looking for a social ticket. I have a social ticket to sell. So, it becomes kind of noisy, but yeah, it's a fun event. In addition to that official track stuff, there's a lot of unofficial things. Hallway meetings. People have a conversation in a working group. The session time is over. They spill out into the hallway. We have a beverage break and a snack break. Cookies and soda, and one day coffee. One part coffee and water, and other beverages the other part. And so you'll meet in the hallway, and you'll say, we'll talk about, I didn't really understand what you meant when you added this extension to the DNS record type. I'm throwing words at random there. The hallway meetings are very important. Anshul pointed out that these are many of the cases, people who've been working together. You can just idle up and listen if there's a technical conversation you find interesting. All of this stuff is public. Say, hey, and feel free to approach anyone who you've seen speak, certainly, and say, hey, what did you mean by this? Or, hey, have you thought about that? And people, dive right into the conversation with you. There is an IETF application. It's on the Google Play Store and Android Store and the Apple Store. It has the agenda. It has for each session, it has pointers to the various parts of the website that are useful. The agenda is available here. That obviously for this one would say 102 agenda. There are sheets posted up by the registration desk. There are last-minute changes made up until, and I think the final changes were just posted to the 102 attendees list like a couple of hours ago. Marathon editing sessions, I should mention, tends to be document editing. So you might not see too much of that or get too involved in as a working group person, as a newcomer, but often a group will meet in the beginning of the week and have a second session at the end of the week, or they'll meet and decide, well, we really want to close out all of the issues that we raised at the meeting, and let's get a bunch of people who are interested together and just sit down face to face and write this document or update this document. Again, because it's a lot more efficient than doing it over email. Oh.
Any questions so far? Are you all with us?
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Just one question. So I just installed the IETF and go from Google Play.
Yeah.
But it showed me with the IETF 98.
You can go and select.
Yeah. So when you say update, you can select you should be able to find off that app. It's the same app with just different scheduling data. So you should be able to load, if you load the current agenda, it should auto update.
You'll have an option of all the IETFs, so you have to mark the 102 Montreal one, and then it will load all the information.
Okay, well, come up afterwards. We'll have a hallway conversation about it. Okay, so the working groups, this is where most of the IETF takes place, what takes up most of the week. The working IETF does its work on its mailing lists. Also, sometimes discussions for some groups is done on GitHub as pull requests and issues, and there's conversation threads that go on there. But there's the written record and then face-to-face. And what's interesting about the face-to-face meeting is it's not like a typical conference that you might see where somebody's presenting something brand new. Instead, they are presenting, here's what's changed since the last time we met, or here's what's changed or been discussed on the mailing list. Now, that brings with it some things that you have to do in order to be a good participant, and we'll talk about on the next slide. All of the sessions are video recorded. In the back of the room there are friendly people with Meet Echo. They stream it on the internet, they record the sessions, they're posted on the IETF's YouTube channel. But the point of the face-to-face meeting is to resolve issues that have come up in previous discussions. Birds of a feather, much more informal. It precedes a working group. Here, this picture is Miriam, the Edu chair, talking about the Edu team. Not really a working group, but follows all the same kinds of things. Sometimes it's a one-shot. They are approved. The area director has to approve a BOF. We have a new thing that started previous IETF called Hot RFC. So this is like, I have an idea. I don't even know if anybody else is interested in it. I'm going to talk about it. It's at the second hour, or it overlaps with the second hour of the social tonight. List was posted to the attendees list. You can also probably find it off the agenda. It's currently, I think there's about a dozen speakers saying, I'm interested in this. And it's all the way from remote attestation to how to encrypt and secure file logs to, and I don't remember what the 10 of those were. The meeting etiquette. This is how to be nice to others and also make the meetings most useful for yourself. Read the documents, or at least the documents that you're interested in beforehand. datatracker.ietf.org/wg/working group name. Right? So have familiarity with the documents, because people won't be presenting the documents, they'll be presenting what's changed in the documents, and that can be confusing if you haven't been following along. Talk to people, especially after a meeting after a working group session, if you have other questions or you want to be able to contribute something. If you're not comfortable coming up to the mic, catch people individually. The working group chairs will always sit at the front of the room at a table like this. The first two rows, it depends on the hotel layout. The first two rows generally have desks and power strips. One of the chairs is set aside for what's called the Jabber Scribe, which I'll mention shortly. And the mic, usually one in the front of the room, is where people talk. for talking. Because these things are streamed and recorded over the internet, we want people to speak directly into the mics. You will often hear, especially as, someone will start talking like this, and your chairman will go, "Eat the mic," right? So you have to, they yell from the back of the room, like happened with me at the very beginning. You have to speak clearly, speak loudly. Many people are no longer native English speakers. It's no longer a US-centric by any stretch of the imagination. Don't worry about it. No matter how bad your English is, I guarantee my ability to speak your language is much worse, right? I'm an American. I don't speak anything else, right? I'm a dumb American. So, okay. Say your name. Every time you come to the mic, say your name. It's important that we have the affiliation, and people will say, Rich Sauls, Akamai Technology. After a while, they'll come up the second or third time, and I'll go, Richard Barnes, Cisco, Richard Barnes. Yeah, it's Barnes again. That's kind of okay for people who've been doing it a lot, people, names and faces, but we want, for the visual record, attribution, so that if there are some concerns about, you shouldn't have talked about that because that's private technology, or that's something we have a patent on. We have a audio and video record. We also want to know, it gives us a way to learn who the people are who are contributing. And so later on, you say, "Oh yeah, I remember you. What was your name again?" You can make connections that way. It's a way to introduce yourself. Everybody does it all the time because there's no guarantee that any one person will be known by everybody in the room. At the beginning of every session, the chairs will hand out blue sheets, and then at the end of the session, we'll call them again. And historically, they were printed on blue paper. They're still printed on blue paper. You just put your name and company affiliation. And so that's the attendance record. Those are also posted to the website as part of the meeting materials afterwards when we post the minutes, any decision action items that were made. We post, all of that is posted. So we can look. It's a very, very open standards development organization. It's very transparent. One of the things the Secretariat does is distribute all the blue sheets, collects them at the end of the day, scans them, posts them online. So we know who was there and who was involved in making a particular decision, or coming to a consensus around something. Technical comments, questions, always welcome. One of the chairs will sometimes use a phrase saying, "I'm going to cut the mic after you." That means nobody else, just for time management, don't take it personally. If, only two more people will discuss this document and then we have to move on to the next item. There's almost always more work to be discussed than available in the time. So we spill over into the hallway, we take it up on the mailing list, and so on. There's a thing called Jabber. It's an instant messaging protocol. The actual protocol is XMPP, but it's an instant message. Pigeon is one of the common ones available on laptop machines. For every IETF meeting, in addition to having its video streamed and its audio streamed, also has a Jabber room, and the Jabber rooms are named whatever the working group is, DNSOP at jabber.ietf.org. The Jabber is a place where remote participants can write something. A Jabber scribe who has a reserved seat next to the mic always gets to cut in front of the line and say, "I'm speaking for Eric, who's not here, and he says blah blah blah." So it's worthwhile to have a Jabber XMPP client. Anyone can join the jabber.ietf.org site, see all the rooms. It's also a good place to ask questions where you can type in. There's usually a bunch of people on the list. There's often sarcasm and snide comments on the list. Don't take it personally, right? But it's also, what did Ecker mean when he said whatever he said at 90 miles an hour? So it's worthwhile for the remote participants and also as a working group meeting. There's one or two, so there'll be a person at the beginning of every meeting picked as a Jabber scribe. There'll also be a person picked to take notes. Those are usually done these days in something called Etherpad, which is a shared collaborative editing, not unlike Google Docs or Microsoft OneDrive doc. Someone will take minutes. Generally, we only record these days. It used to be a much more detailed recording, almost a transcript of what was said. But now we record, the decision points. We had, a call for consensus on whether to adopt this document. It passed. One of the things, going back, the Jabber Scribe does is also keep track of what's being displayed and type into the Jabber room so that remote participants can follow along when the page changes, right? So right now they'd say, they could put the title or they could say slide page 21. If you're preparing slides, that's why it's always crucial to make sure you have slide numbers, as some of these do not. The IETF, they're meeting, as I mentioned, all day tomorrow. The sessions are blocked out. They show up in the agenda, a couple hours on this, a couple hours on that, and so on. They look at stuff that's a little further out. So think of this as the research group and the IETF as the development group. Right? Area sessions. So this is where I mentioned before about the area sessions, the plenary. These are shots from the plenary. One of the interesting things at the end of the plenary, at the beginning, thank you for the sponsors. Whoever's hosting it gets to come up and get their hand shaken and pictures taken. Credit for laying out the tens of thousands of dollars it costs to help run this. And then they'll also announce where the next couple of IETF meetings are. Okay. Hackathons, code sprints, other stuff mentioned that happens earlier. There is a code lounge, a recent activity. One room set aside for the whole week where people can just come and work on code. And that's a guaranteed place, particularly for collaborators at other organizations. You can meet with your colleagues and work on something or try to debug, a particular open source issue, right? Why doesn't NTP properly recognize this particular command? Why doesn't, bind understand that resource record type? That's the kind of thing that can happen at the code lounge. There's a main social event. These slides are from the Singapore meeting, two meetings ago. That's the Singapore Aquarium. In the past, we've met at the Hockey Hall of Fame. We're meeting at a big sports bar with a 46-foot TV, I think. This is the sisters meeting at the aquarium. Lots of really good food, free wine and beer, soda. And it's a chance, again, to just talk and socialize. The lines for food are always long, but there's always enough food. This one happens to be reasonably close, but generally last year or 2 years ago in London, we had to get on bus rides to take it to the Museum of the History of London, which was kind of neat. In Prague, we actually took a water shuttle over to this really cool, Franz Kafka house place. I'm getting close to the end, and now the slides are going to get what we call more like eye charts, which is it's full of text. But I do want to mention this. We strongly believe in no harassment here. The word Ombudsteam is a mixture of ombudsman and team, so it's sort of glommed together. It's a made-up word. These people and Allison Menken going left to right, Allison Menken, Pete Resnick, and Linda Clyworth. They're all long-time IETF people. They are familiar with the norms and practices of how the IETF meetings go. They've had training to handle issues that might arise. So if you're being harassed or you see someone harassing someone or getting into a situation and you don't feel comfortable and you perfectly good reasons not to, getting involved there, or it's resolved, but you want to report it so that corrective action can be taken, find one of these folks. Okay? We have, I should mention, BCP is an example, best current practices is an example of, you can solve any problem with a layer of indirection. BCP 25 will always be the harassment policy. The link may change, but you can go up to any search engine, type IETF BCP 25, and you'll get a pointer to the current harassment policy. It's more useful when we have documents about, for example, there is an RFC that talks about the words must, may, should, shall, and so on. When printed in all capital letters, they have specific meanings about interop and standards requirements. There's a BCP for that. The RFC underneath it has changed because it's been revised. We don't revise an RFC. Once it's published, it's frozen, except for maybe errata. We write a new RFC, but the BCP numbers will always stay the same. Dots and ribbons, many people will have, you guys have, most of you, I'm sure if not all, have a tag that says newcomers. That means you get special dispensation. You can go up to anyone and say, hey, and ask about something or look for a way to help. There are, we used to have smiley faces on the, I don't know why we don't have them this year. A blue dot means that someone's a chair of one or more working groups. They can put labels underneath them, ribbons. There are labels for the other organizations, the nominating committee who will pick next year's area directors and so on. So if you see a dot or a ribbon, you can ask, feel free to ask them. Many of the dot and ribbon people will be at the newcomers reception later this afternoon. All of these slides should be available, and we'll make it available. If you go to datatracker.ietf.org and you look for the meeting materials, if you scroll down to the Edu team, there's the slides. Also, we were fortunate just a couple days ago, someone posted a Japanese translation of these. We're working on standardizing them, not so it becomes rote, but so that we can work on translating, to other languages. So this is, you can't read that. I can barely read it here. But these are, here's where the tutorials are. All of this stuff should be fairly straightforward and easy to find on the web page. If not, almost anyone can help you point to it. The people at the registration desk or the RFC editor will have a table in the registration area. They're also excellent resources for finding things. Almost out. More reading sources. Oh, I'll mention the sisters. Or you should mention sisters. It's a confederation of women who attend the IETF meetings. They have a regular, every meeting they have at least one lunch.
You can join the mailing list and discuss whatever you want to. There's a lunch on Thursday, I think, which you can sign up for. Yeah, that's interesting.
We're very interested. Yeah, we're very interested in expanding the reach and making the IETF be, a welcoming place. It doesn't have a bad history, but you have, computer science, engineering, and starting from the US and, moving out tends to be male dominated. We're trying to address that in some ways. The most important webpage, datatracker.ietf.org. Remote participation, not relevant for you folks, but if you're not able to get travel approval, I should mention the IETF meets 3 times a year, once in the Americas, typically America, but Canada, America. A couple years ago, we met in Buenos Aires, so that's in, what month are we? In August, July. In March, we meet in Europe, London, Prague, Darmstadt, a whole bunch of areas. The November meeting is in Asia. Next November, it's meeting in Bangkok. Right? 111 is the phrase, so we have one here, one there, one there. for whatever values of here and there are. If you can't participate or you can't attend the meeting, okay, I want to hit the big red button there. Yeah, a remote participant. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, this is Abhijit here from ECI Telecom. And my question for you is, how do you decide when a BOF becomes a working group? I mean, are there any rules or guidelines? And one more question is, how do you decide who the chairs are for a working group? One more last question is, how do you ensure that a particular working group is not monopolized by a certain company or a set of companies? Yeah, that's the questions.
Okay. Example of remote participation. Now, you can't see it because we're showing the slides, but there's this cute little Pac-Man video that, you see someone come across when the chairs select them, they come up and they, get to eat the mic. You'll see it in the working group sessions. We just don't have it set up here. So the answer to all three of those things is, how is the decision made to go from a BOF to a working group? The area directors pick the working groups. They define in their area. Now, occasionally a working group will span multiple areas, like Quick is both applications and transport. But generally it's obvious what area a working group should be in, and it's up to the area directors to to decide whether or not to charter a working group. Part of that is the BOF participants, or a subset of them, will come up with a definition of what the problem is and a timetable for how long it will take, which tends never to be met, and the kinds of documents they think they'll end up producing. If the working group directors approve that, then the group is formed. Anybody can join. There is an announcement on the IETF Announce mailing list. And that's where all major publications and group creation and formation. When a working group is done, the group gets shut down, no new work, but the mailing list still exists. Right? Those exist forever. How do the chairs are appointed by the area directors? The area directors have the power to replace a chair at any point. And that happens. If a group is stuck and can't come to any resolution, they'll talk to the chairs and either add a chair or replace them. If a group seems dominated by one organization, that's the responsibility of the working group chairs. And if it's not working well, then the area directors step in and help strengthen the chairs to limit that kind of thing.
I think the rough consensus thing, the humming thing, really helps because it keeps people from monopolizing a particular group. We don't go by a majority rule here, as I said before. It's more of a, rough consensus. So that helps.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about hum, so we'll do. Oh, next door. So we'll do a sample hum just so you can get a feel for what it's like. And the question, it's always phrased as a couple of choices and then need more information. So the question I'll state the question, then we'll do the hum, which is, did you find this tutorial useful? And you say yes, no, or you don't know yet because you want to wait till 2 minutes more when it ends. So please hum now if you found the tutorial useful.
Yes.
Please hum now if you did not find it useful. So there, right, you could all hear it, right? It was clear. Oh, and please hum now if you don't know, if you don't have enough information to decide. Okay. So, right, the advantage of humming is you can't look around and see who the important people are and vote like them. It's harder to do voting blocks, if not impossible. It tends to be pretty clear when there is a consensus, right? So clearly not useful was not a consensus. From my biased perspective, most of you found it useful, so that's great. Some still aren't sure. That's why later on there'll be feedback. As you get some experience with the IETF week, you'll be able to give feedback to the Edu team about how well you were set up for this upcoming week. And with that, in typical IETF fashion, we are over time of our slot. So thank you for coming. I'll be around, Anshul will be around here, and there's various people, on the Edu team who can answer any questions for you. But thank you. Yeah. It should show up on the other screen. I don't think it's set up. Hey.